For Global Business Update, Michael Wolsing joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Morning. Let's first of all do the Asia Pacific stuff, and the Hong Kong shares jumped more than 5% after the release of that US inflation data, which actually was much better and raising investor hopes that inflation has actually peaked. The Hong Kong Hang Seng rose just above 5%. The tech up nearly 7%. Shanghai Composite gained 1.5%. The Shanghai was boosted by reports that China has taken the decision to scrap COVID flight restrictions as well as cutting the quarantine requirements. But against that is a very mixed picture coming out of China. COVID outbreak worsens in the southern Chinese city of Guangzhou, which is very sort of export heavy. It's part of their export, and it's not immediately clear to what extent the business activity has been affected. Schools have actually closed. That's an ongoing story. Joe Biden, the President of the United States, is expected to talk Chinese economic practices, Taiwan and Russia's war in Ukraine when his first meeting with President Xi. That comes up ahead of the G20 summit in Bali in Indonesia. And it'll be interesting to see what those two leaders have to say to each other, if indeed we get some sort of information. Malaysia economy. Now, here's an interesting country, which big service industries and all. I suppose the first double-digit growth for the first time in a year. So doing extremely well. Jump driven by continued expansion in domestic demand, a firm recovery in the labour market. It's the 34th largest economy by nominal GDP in the world, but it's got a big network of Chinese businesses as well, and it's also a big facilitator in international trade, being close to the shipping routes in the Strait of Malacca. Let us go to the United States and see the Dow up 1,200 points yesterday, the largest rise in 2 years, as a result of the lower than expected inflation figures. And October's consumer price index, just for the record, rose 0.4%, 7.7% a year ago. It's quite good, actually, given that the year's high of the headline rate was 9.1. It's now 7.7. However, the balance of political power in Congress has still not been decided. There is still votes to happen. The Senate result may not happen until December. The runoff election in Georgia next month between Democrat Senator Raphael Warnock and the Republican challenger Herschel Walker. That could tip the balance of power within the Senate. Here's Elon Musk, now fresh into his boss of Twitter role. He's been talking about. He's been sending emails and also having conferences with people still working there. He said that the company might not survive the downturn without significant subscription revenue. He's also going to make very, very sweeping changes there. And he's actually said that it's entirely likely that Twitter could go bankrupt. So he doesn't mince his words. The US regulator says it's concerned about Twitter. It caused deep concern, actually, after the platform's top privacy and compliance officers reportedly quit as well. As far as the UK is concerned, two big things here. Jeremy Hunt, the finance minister, chancellor of the Exchequer, plans a big part of austerity after the election. This indeed, presumably, if they get voted in after 2025, and should be saving about £27 billion a year by 2028. But however, the latest growth figures from the UK show that recession is actually looming. The latest official figures show the economy shrank between July and September by 0.2%. Adding, do you remember all that time when they were rushing out to give money when COVID was happening to various companies? Well, it turns out that about a third of those companies, in fact, over a quarter of those companies, didn't actually need, they could have raised the money by themselves. The excuse that the government's offering about this is that speed at the time was of the essence, but it does underline the fact that people waving free money at you, you're probably going to take it, aren't you? Oil, crude prices, growing over, well, there was a slight worry about COVID concerns, but given the inflation report and given there's a fairly tight market as well. That should keep oil prices higher. Gold prices are surging after the cool inflation report has made confident the Fed can downshift to perhaps a half point. Right. And cryptos, oh dear, oh dear. A dark period for cryptos right now, given all the FTX debacle and all the rest of it. A lot of contagion risks around the crypto industry, and a lot of blue chips, blue chips companies that were investing in crypto are thinking again about it. But however said, though, Bitcoin's up 10% this morning, Ethereum up 16%. But I suspect that in the near future, investment into these sort of currencies will, or whatever you care to call them, should we just call them cryptos, will probably actually be fairly shallow, given the problems that the FTX thing has thrown up, and whether there's going to be contagion around the rest of the industry. That's the global view this morning.
Real quick, a couple of things you said. Some people are beginning to say this is like another Bernie Madoff moment, with crypto, and the White House is saying we have to look more into this in terms of regulations. I'd like to know your thoughts on that. And secondly, I'd like to know your thoughts on the companies that collected money that they could have raised independently during COVID. So what did they do? Are they going to put the money back in the system? And 7.7% inflation rate in America, things are cooling down now. Is this some triumphalism for Joe Biden?
Well, I think, I don't know if triumphalism is the right word. I mean, he actually is rejoicing in the fact that the wave of Republican gains didn't happen. But I think he's still got quite a problem in pushing through anything else. I mean, the midterms, I would have to say, have been very kind to him, quite honestly, given that the shrinkage of what was originally the infrastructure bill, if you remember, was a couple of $1 trillion, is now shrunk to $693 billion. So that really shows what he was trying to push through. As far as cryptos are concerned, well, I mean, it's volatile, isn't it? We don't know what the contagion is actually going to be from the collapse of that company and the considerable losses that the owner of the company actually took. I mean, I suppose the question is, will venture capitalists be wandering into that territory again, or will they be slightly wary? I think we have to see how all this disintegrates and falls down, and how many moving parts there are, and whether they're successful or not. I mean, it's extremely volatile. I've never said it's a bad idea. I just feel as though it's not for the likes of me. I prefer something slightly safer.
Well, 7.7% CPI rate at the end of October in the US, lower than the 8% that economists were predicting. Investors seem to be excited. But does this really mean that it would lead to a cresting of inflationary pressures? I think that's the issue, because there are speculations that the U.S. Central Bank is not likely to increase rates beyond 0.5% going forward, instead of the 0.75% percentage points that we saw. One, Hurricane Elon Musk, the chaos and uncertainty and the disarray into which he has thrown Twitter in 2 weeks of being in charge. First Twitter meeting with his staff. Yes, a number of door warnings, but there's one part of it that interests me. Not the fact that he says there will be no longer free meals and that the company is likely to be bankrupt, but the point he made about forever, about remote working. He says, no, you have to put in 80 hours per week. You have to be in the office to do your work. Under COVID, we said a lot about the world of work. Is it really true that people who work remotely work less, or do they work more? What do you think?
Well, I have to say, I mean, I think that most people are on 24/7 actually these days, what with emails and the rest of it. Whether they're actually got half an eye on Netflix, I really don't know. There have been a lot of criticism in this country about people actually being off, but they're sort of public servants, and they've been off, and they bringing them back to the office. I mean, what Musk is doing, I don't think it's the kind of company that I would particularly like to work for. He's saying at the one time it's got to be subscription based now. It's got to be subscription based to survive. Then he's saying it might go bankrupt. Then it looks like the FTC is getting involved because they've lost they've lost some of their senior regulators. I mean, it does look rather odd. And if you tie in all that as well, whether he can actually actually devote the kind of attention that he needs to Tesla, which still needs to up its production figures and still needs to produce batteries that don't catch fire and so on. You know, there's lots of these things which actually depend upon one man. The problem, I think, with somebody like Elon Musk is there is no question that there is a brilliant brain in there. The fact is, does he really want to be bothered with the day-to-day grind of business? I mean, this is what single people in charge of companies actually suffer from, have done since time immemorial. If there's just one person in charge, you know, and the point about business is that delegation is the key thing. It's pointless just having one person in charge because they can't be expected to donate all their energies in the right kind of direction all the time. I mean, it's as simple as that, really. So yeah, I think that it faces big problems as well, and certainly investors are beginning to feel it too.
All right, thank you so much for your time, Michael.